I know they're laughing behind my back. I don't need to hear them to imagine the words my mother and sister whisper to each other while sitting in their luxurious living room, holding expensive wine glasses, their lips curling in disdain. She's probably busy with another one of her crazy projects, forgetting to eat again. Or worse, when will she finally accept that she's never going to succeed? Those words, though never spoken to my face, have followed me like a shadow for years. My name is Catherine Monroe, and at 31 my entire family sees me as nothing more than a pathetic failure. While they throw extravagant parties, discuss multi-million-dollar deals, and mingle with the most powerful social circles, I sit alone in my small apartment, working over 90 hours a week to build a company they believe is doomed. The truth? I'm about to accomplish something they never saw coming. Since I was a child, my mother had a perfect plan for my life. Or rather, for our family's future. I was supposed to go to Harvard Business School, work for my father's prestigious corporation, and marry a suitable man to solidify our family's status. But I didn't follow her plan, I chose my own path. Instead of stepping into a sleek office with a six-figure salary right after graduation, I dived into fintech, a field where people warned only geniuses or fools survived. With a small team of developers, I built an AI-driven platform capable of analyzing and predicting financial market trends with unprecedented accuracy. A bold, risky project. And the only thing I ever truly believed in. But to my family, all they saw was a stubborn girl wasting her youth in a rundown apartment, without a single dollar to spare. Sophia, my younger sister, was the golden child my mother took pride in. At 27, Sophia had everything my mother dreamed of. A degree from Wharton, a high-ranking position as CFO at the family company, and an engagement to Andrew Carter, the only son of one of New York's top real estate moguls. Their wedding would be the event of the season, bringing together the wealthiest and most influential people in the city. And me? I was just the eccentric older sister they reluctantly sent an invitation to for the sake of appearances. Every time we met, Sophia never missed an opportunity to drive a dagger into my pride. "You missed another family gathering?" she once remarked, giving me a slow, judgmental once-over. "Or are you still locking yourself away in that tiny box of yours, clinging to a hopeless dream?" She thought I was avoiding them on purpose. The truth was, I had no need to be present at dinners where I was treated like an outsider. Last week marked the 12th family dinner I had skipped. This time, my mother sent Sophia to check on me. Sophia stood at my door, a brand new Chanel bag in hand, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against it as if she were mentally calculating my failures. "Catherine, Mom sent me to see if you're still alive," she said as she stepped inside, her eyes sweeping over my modest apartment with a look of utter disgust, as if she had just walked into the filthiest place on earth. "God, you really live like this? Why are you punishing yourself?" I gritted my teeth, saying nothing. Instead of answering, I turned back to my desk, where financial reports filled my screen. I had no time to explain to someone who had never worked more than 50 hours a week that success didn't always come in the form of a luxury office or a diamond ring the size of a walnut. But Sophia wasn't done. "You know," she said, flipping her golden hair over her shoulder, "Andrew just bought me a yacht. We're going to the Maldives after the wedding. Oh, and by the way, I hope you wear something that doesn't look too cheap if you plan on attending." Slap. No one hit anyone, but her words landed like a slap across my face. I could have ended the conversation right then and there. I could have pulled out a single sheet of paper, a contract that, if Sophia saw it, would wipe that smug expression off her perfect face in an instant. Because I was about to become a millionaire. After 4 grueling years, the AI platform I built had secured an investment from one of the world's largest venture capital firms. We had just finalized a $50 million deal, and if everything went according to plan, my company's valuation would triple within the next 2 years. But I didn't say a word, not yet. I just looked at Sophia and smiled. "Don't worry about your wedding gift," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "I have something special for you." Sophia scoffed. As long as it's not some homemade card or a messy sketch, I'll appreciate it. I looked at my sister, feeling an eerie sense of calm. They had no idea what was coming. I watched Sophia walk out of my apartment, the sharp click of her heels echoing against the worn tile floor. As the door shut behind her, I remained still, my fingers tightening around the cold coffee cup. This apartment, the very thing she sneered at, was where I had sacrificed sleep, warm evenings, and even my family's recognition to build something far greater than any of them could ever imagine. I took a deep breath and turned back to my computer screen. The contract was waiting for my confirmation. This moment should have felt like a glorious victory. A $50 million deal, negotiated in secret for the past 3 months. A major financial firm had decided to acquire my AI platform, a technology they believed would revolutionize the market. I had done what no one in my family thought possible. From a so-called failure, I had become a millionaire overnight. But I didn't feel satisfied, not completely. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the unread message from my mother. Mom, Catherine, just remember not to do anything attention-seeking at Sophia's wedding. This is the most important day of her life. I don't want anyone talking about your differences. Differences? I let out a quiet laugh. All my life, I had been the stain on my family's perfect picture. An embarrassment my mother had to conceal. I shut off my phone and returned to the contract. With one click, everything I had worked for would become reality. Oh, but not yet. The timing wasn't right. The next day, Sophia texted me again. Sophia, Mom said you're coming to the wedding. Don't wear anything cheap, and for God's sake, don't show up late like some careless fool. We have important guests. Sophia. And don't do anything stupid. Everyone knows you don't fit into this world. The last sentence made me pause. Don't fit into this world? I used to think that too, that I didn't belong at the lavish parties, the gatherings where people measured each other's worth by designer labels, and the size of their diamond rings. But the truth was, it wasn't that I didn't belong in their world. It was that they could never comprehend the world I was building. I glanced at my desk, where a thick folder rested beside my laptop. Inside were the documents that Sophia, my mother, and my father had never seen. The proof of the deal in motion. The numbers that showed I had accomplished what they deemed impossible. I could send it to Sophia right now. Let her see that the failure she had always looked down on had soared far beyond her reach. But no. I would wait. I wanted Sophia to witness the moment her world cracked. The moment she realized that everything she believed about me, about success, about herself, was wrong. I picked up my phone and typed a quick message. Me. Don't worry, Sophia, I have something special for you. I set my phone down, feeling an odd sense of peace wash over me. They had no idea what was coming. I stood before the mirror, my fingers brushing over the smooth fabric of my form-fitting Versace dress. Every line, every detail exuded confidence and power. For the first time in years, I wasn't wearing faded jeans or an oversized hoodie. I was no longer Catherine Monroe, the family's so-called failure. Tonight, I would walk into their world, but not as someone to be dismissed. The envelope sat inside my clutch. It wasn't heavy, yet the weight of what it contained was greater than anything I had ever carried. Proof of the $50 million deal. The result of years of relentless work, unnoticed by them. Tonight, they would see the truth. Sophia's wedding was an extravagant spectacle. White silk tablecloths draped across banquet tables, crystal glasses filled with champagne, chandeliers casting shimmering reflections on the priceless jewels worn by the guests. Everything was flawless, just the way Sophia liked to control her life. I stepped into the banquet hall, feeling every gaze sweep over me. Some eyes held surprise, others curiosity. No one saw Catherine in an old sweater and ripped jeans anymore. Then, I met my mother's eyes. She froze, her lips parting slightly as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her gaze flickered over my dress, my heels, then settled on my face. Confident, devoid of any trace of the daughter she had once dismissed. Sophia sat at the head table, surrounded by her closest friends and her new husband, Andrew Carter. She saw me too, and as if by instinct, the smile on her lips froze. I walked toward the tables, picking up a champagne glass from a passing waiter, moving slowly, deliberately. Then, Sophia spoke. "Catherine?" She narrowed her eyes, her voice laced with mockery and mild irritation. "You actually came, and wow, you're wearing designer? I didn't expect that." A few guests chuckled softly. I simply smiled, saying nothing. My mother cut in, her voice sharp. "Catherine, don't ruin Sophia's special day." I lifted my champagne glass, swirling it lightly before replying calmly. "Of course not, Mother, my sister is getting married, how could I not bring a gift?" Then, I placed the envelope on the table and slid it toward Sophia. "Congratulations, Sophia. This is my wedding gift to you." All eyes shifted to the plain white envelope. Sophia scoffed, picking it up with that familiar air of condescension. "Oh, don't tell me it's another one of your handmade cards. I still remember that weird painting you gave me years ago. I had to hide it so no one would see." Her friends burst into laughter. I remained silent, waiting. Sophia tore open the envelope, pulling out the stack of documents inside. Her eyes skimmed the first few lines, and her smirk began to fade. Confusion crept onto her face. Then she reached the number, $50 million USD, and her hands started to tremble. "Tell me this is a joke, Catherine." She looked up, her voice no longer arrogant, just sheer disbelief. "Is this real?" I tilted my head slightly, my expression calm. "100% real, Sophia." My mother snatched the papers from Sophia's hands, her eyes scanning the words rapidly, before her face drained of color. "Selling the company? $50 million. She turned to me, her voice shaking with barely restrained shock. "What the hell did you do, Catherine?" "I built a company that everyone said was hopeless," I said with a slight shrug. "And then, one of the biggest financial firms decided to acquire it. I guess I wasn't as useless as you thought." A suffocating silence filled the room. The guests, those who had laughed at me, those who had always believed Sophia was the perfect daughter, were now witnessing a truth that had been buried for years. Sophia gripped the papers tightly, her voice dry. You can't have..." I smirked. "I can't have succeeded? Can't have more money than Andrew's family? Can't have accomplished this on my own?" I held her gaze, my voice steady yet cutting. "And yet, here I am." No one spoke. "Then," I continued, "but this is just the beginning. My technology will keep evolving. The company's valuation is expected to surpass $150 million in the next 2 years. And when that happens..." I took a slow sip of my champagne, savoring the moment. "I won't just be the most successful person in this room. I'll be the most successful person in this family." I don't know who was the first to take a sharp breath, but I heard it clearly. Sophia sank into her chair, her gaze vacant. She had never imagined that the sister she had always looked down on would be the one to make her feel small. My mother, my father, all of them, were in utter disbelief. They had thought I would never break free from the limits they had placed on me. But today, I shattered them all. After the wedding, everything changed. No more pitying glances when I walked into a room. No more mocking smirks from relatives when my name was mentioned at family gatherings. The name Catherine Monroe was no longer tied to failure. Instead, it came with curiosity. Respectful handshakes, and sweet yet calculated congratulations. My company, the one my family once dismissed as a joke, was now at the center of the financial world. News of the $50 million deal spread across major financial publications, and CEOs who had once rejected me were now eager to collaborate. And Sophia? She hated every second of it. 3 weeks after the wedding, I sat in my new office, an upscale apartment on the 45th floor with a sweeping view of the city. Sunlight streamed through the glass walls, reflecting off my laptop screen, where financial data fluctuated in real time. My phone lit up with a new notification. "Breaking news. Carter Group faces financial crisis. Possible bankruptcy." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Just as expected. I had seen this coming, long before Sophia walked down the aisle in her pristine white gown. My AI technology didn't just analyze financial data, it predicted corporate collapses based on millions of variables. And 6 months ago, my platform had flagged a red alert for Carter Group. I had tracked every number, every concealed financial report, every reckless investment decision. Sophia's in-laws weren't as secure as she believed. Their empire was built on debt, market manipulation, and high-risk deals. And now? It was teetering on the edge of collapse. Sophia didn't know it yet. But she would, soon enough. My mother's call came at 10 a.m. I picked up, her voice was rushed, unsteady, a rarity. "Catherine, have you seen the news? The Carter family. They're in serious trouble." I twirled a pen between my fingers, my voice calm. "I know." She hesitated. How did you know before everyone else?" I didn't answer right away, letting her sit in the silence, letting her feel the weight of the gap between what she had believed about me and the reality in front of her. After a few long seconds, I finally spoke, my voice light but firm. "Because I'd been watching them. My technology predicted this long ago. But of course, if I had told you earlier, you wouldn't have believed me." She fell silent. I could picture her face, stunned, disoriented, grasping for something to hold on to. "Mom." Her voice softened. "Sophia doesn't know what to do. The Carters are about to lose everything. If this isn't handled properly, they might face an investigation. Andrew could end up in court." I raised an eyebrow, though I wasn't particularly surprised. "Is that so?" I murmured, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "Looks like Sophia's perfect dream is starting to crumble." That afternoon, Sophia called me. For the first time in years, her voice held no sharpness, no arrogance. "Catherine?" She hesitated, as if she couldn't believe she was calling me for help. "How can I help you?" I asked, my voice perfectly polite, but Sophia knew full well that I held all the power now. "You knew, didn't you?" she said, her voice dry. "Knew what?" I feigned ignorance. "Andrew's family's collapse?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, as if saying it any louder would make it more real. "Their company is losing everything, and if they can't handle their debts..." I heard her take a deep, shaky breath through the phone. "I'll lose everything too." And that was the moment I had been waiting for. Sophia Monroe, the perfect daughter, the privileged heiress who prided herself on making the right choices, now stood on the edge of losing it all. She had chosen the wrong path. I tightened my grip on the phone, but my voice remained eerily calm. "I warned you, Sophia." She held her breath. "I told you, success isn't just about marrying the right man or having your parents' backing. I tried to show you that everything you thought about me, about life, was wrong, but you never listened." I didn't know." Her voice began to tremble. "Catherine, I know I was wrong. But now, you can't let me lose everything." I leaned back in my chair, letting every word sink into the space between us. "I can help you," I said slowly, deliberate. She inhaled sharply. "But you have to accept one truth. Your perfect dream is over." A long silence. I could hear Sophia's fear through the phone. "I understand," she whispered. I closed my eyes and allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. "Then," I said, "it's time for you to learn how to rebuild from nothing." 3 days after Sophia's call, my father showed up at my office. I had expected this. The man who had always been cold and decisive, the one who had told me to my face that I was wasting my life, now stood here, dressed in an expensive but slightly wrinkled suit. There was something in his expression I had never seen before. Worry. My assistant called ahead, but I didn't tell her to turn him away. I wanted to witness this moment for myself. He stepped inside, his eyes sweeping over the sleek, luxurious office. This was no longer the tiny apartment he had once scorned. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows, premium leather chairs, large monitors displaying fluctuating market numbers. He stood there, staring at undeniable proof that I had won. "Catherine," he spoke, his voice heavy, as if every word cost him a piece of his pride. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "Father," my tone was cool, impassive. He exhaled deeply before pulling out a chair and sitting across from me. I hadn't invited him to sit, but he didn't wait for permission. "Sophie is in serious trouble." He got straight to the point, abandoning his usual pretense. I lifted my coffee cup, taking a slow sip, unfazed. "I know." He narrowed his eyes. "How long have you known?" I shrugged. 6 months ago." A flicker of shock crossed his face. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, trying to piece together how I had known before the Carter family themselves. I set my cup down, lacing my fingers together as I met his gaze. "Where are you here, Father?" He was silent for a moment, then let out a heavy sigh. "Sophia is about to lose everything." His voice had a slight crack in it. "She has no income, no real experience. If the Carter family goes bankrupt, she'll lose all of her privileges too." I tilted my head, saying nothing. I wanted him to say the words he had been avoiding. Finally, after a long hesitation, he swallowed the last remnants of his pride, and said, "She needs your help." I let out a soft laugh. Not out of amusement but at the irony of it all. Me, the so-called disgrace of the family, was now the only one who could save their golden daughter. I leaned back in my chair, making no effort to make this easy for him. "And what exactly do you want me to do?" My voice was calm, but there was a sharp blade hidden beneath the words. My father hesitated before speaking slowly. "She needs a job. A place to start over. Could you find a position for her in your company?" I let out a dry chuckle. "So you want me to hand Sophia an easy way out? Give her a fancy title, a high salary, without making her face the consequences of her own choices?" He pressed his lips together, not denying it, but I could see the expectation in his eyes. He thought I would soften. He thought I was still the daughter desperate for my parents' approval. But I was no longer that Catherine Monroe. I placed my hands on the table, meeting his gaze directly. "Fine," I said smoothly. "I'll give Sophia an opportunity. But not in the way you think." My father frowned, wary. "What do you mean?" I pulled a folder from my drawer and placed it on the table. "Sophia can work at my company, but she'll start from the bottom. At an entry-level salary, just like any new hire." He froze, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. I continued. "No special treatment, no private office, no favors. She will write reports, analyze data, and actually learn how to work, instead of relying on family connections." I paused briefly before delivering the final blow. "However, there is one important condition." His grip tightened on the armrest. "What is it?" I met his gaze, my words cutting like a knife. "Sophia must publicly admit that she was wrong." His eyes narrowed, not immediately grasping my meaning. I leaned forward slightly. "She has to stand in front of the whole family, in front of everyone who's ever heard her belittle me, and acknowledge that she misjudged me, this company, and what true success actually means." My father fell silent. I could see the internal battle raging within him. He wanted to help Sophia, but my condition meant forcing her to swallow the pride that my mother had nurtured in her for years. "And if she refuses?" he asked, his voice lower now. I shrugged. "Then she can figure out how to survive, just like I did." The air in the room thickened. At last my father stood up, studying me for a long moment. And in his eyes, I saw something unfamiliar. Recognition. "You really have changed," he said, his voice rough. I smiled, but there was no emotion behind it. "No, Father, I've always been this way, you just never saw it." He didn't argue. After a brief hesitation, he picked up the folder from the table and walked out of the room. I watched his retreating figure, completely unfazed. Now, the choice was Sophia's. She could either swallow her pride and learn how to truly work, or watch her perfect dream collapse entirely. 3 days after my father left my office, Sophia showed up. I had expected her to come, but I hadn't expected her to look like this. Sophia Monroe, the woman who always arrived in designer dresses with perfectly sleek hair and flawless makeup, now looked as if she had stepped out of a nightmare. The dark circles under her eyes were deep, her lips pale, and her expensive coat had creases. Something that would have been unthinkable for the old Sophia. She stood at my office door, with no arrogance, no condescending smirk. I didn't tell my assistant to turn her away. I wanted to witness this moment myself. Looking up from my computer screen, I slowly took in my sister's appearance. "I take it you've made your decision," I said calmly. Sophia swallowed hard before stepping inside and closing the door behind her. She stood there for a few seconds hesitating before finally speaking. "I'll work here." Her voice was so quiet that if I hadn't been paying attention I might not have heard it. I nodded, unsurprised. "Good." I slid a folder across the desk. "You can start tomorrow." Sophia stared at the stack of papers as if it were a death sentence. She didn't move, but I could see the internal struggle in her eyes. Then she took a deep breath, picked up the folder, and slowly flipped to the first page. Sophia's first day was anything but easy. I didn't place her in a spacious conference room with leather chairs. I didn't give her a meaningless title so she could coast through her job without actually doing anything. No. I placed her exactly where she never thought she would be: the data analysis department. There, she was no longer Sophia Monroe, the privileged daughter of a wealthy family. She was just another new employee, and no one cared about her last name. Her first assignment was to process financial reports, review data, and write a market trends summary. She had no idea what she was doing. I could see the panic in her eyes as she scrolled through the overwhelming spreadsheets. No one held her hand. No one walked her through the steps slowly. "You're not going to help me?" she asked me during lunch when we happened to run into each other in the company kitchen. I set down my coffee cup, crossing my arms. "Sophia, I learned everything on my own without anyone helping me," I said, my voice devoid of pity. "I'm not your babysitter. If you want to work here, you have to learn how to stand on your own." She pressed her lips together but didn't argue. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of patience in her eyes. The following days weren't any easier. Sophia began to realize that real work wasn't like attending lavish parties, where she only needed to smile and shake hands to build connections. She made mistakes. A lot of them. She entered incorrect data into the system, forcing the entire team to redo a report. She overlooked a small error in an analysis, causing the projected forecasts to be off. And for the first time in her life, Sophia was reprimanded by a superior, with no one to defend her. I didn't help her. I wanted her to feel exactly what I had once felt. The confusion, the helplessness, and the sinking realization that she had no power to rely on. But what surprised me was that Sophia didn't quit. 2 weeks passed, and I began to see the change. Sophia no longer arrived late. She no longer stared blankly at the screen, but instead focused, trying to understand each number, each financial model. She no longer complained when there was too much data to process. And then, one morning, I received an email from the head of the data analysis team. To Catherine. Sophia just completed her latest market trend analysis. I have to admit, she did better than I expected. This report is 5% more accurate than the previous ones. Just wanted to let you know, she's really trying. I stared at the email for a long moment. Then, I let out a small amused smile. Maybe, just maybe, Sophia was actually learning something. The next day I met her in the conference room. "Good job," I said, placing her report on the table. "I read it. You've improved." Sophia looked at me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. For the first time without a trace of arrogance in her voice. I studied my sister for a few seconds before saying, "But you still have a lot to learn." Sophia nodded, no argument, no defiance. Just acceptance. And for the first time in my life, I truly believed that Sophia could change. A year passed. My company was no longer just a young startup. Its market value had reached $150 million, and our AI platform had been integrated into some of the largest financial corporations in the US. The CEOs who once ignored me now personally invited me to major conferences, and the media hailed me as a pioneer in fintech. But what surprised me the most wasn't the company's success. It was Sophia. She was no longer the woman I once knew. No more designer dresses at work, no more condescending looks or mocking tones. Instead, Sophia had become one of the most dedicated employees I had ever seen. She no longer avoided difficult tasks, nor did she expect anyone to help her. When I assigned her a new market data analysis project, she spent weeks meticulously combing through the numbers, even staying late at the office without complaint. When her first major report was praised by the board, she didn't look at me expecting recognition. She simply nodded, knowing she had earned it through her own effort. The day Sophia was promoted to a mid-level management position, she walked into my office with a cup of coffee in hand. "I figured you'd like this," she said, placing the cup on my desk before sitting across from me. I looked at her for a long moment. Then, I let out a quiet chuckle. "What is it?" I asked, crossing my arms. Sophia let out a soft laugh. "I used to think you were just a dreamer, lost in unrealistic ambitions. But now I understand. No one succeeds just because of what they were born into." I leaned back in my chair, looking at Sophia differently. "So, what have you learned after a year of working?" I asked. She exhaled slowly. "Then I'm not special," she said, her voice almost weightless. "I used to believe that having a family name and connections meant I could have everything. But the truth is, no one values you unless you prove your worth. I had to start from scratch. I had to show that I deserved to be here." I nodded, feeling an unfamiliar sense of pride, one I never thought I would have. Sophia was no longer the arrogant, entitled girl she once was. Now she was someone who understood the value of real effort. My family changed too, though I no longer waited for it to happen. My mother stopped making passive-aggressive remarks about how different I was at family gatherings. My father no longer tried to pull me into the family business, because now, they both knew I had grown beyond anything they could control. They never apologized in words. But I noticed the shift in small ways. A phone call from my mother just to check in. An article my father sent me about my success, without a single word of criticism. And I understood. They had realized their mistakes. But that no longer mattered to me. I hadn't built this company to gain my family's approval. I hadn't created this success to prove them wrong. I had done it because I believed in myself. One late afternoon, Sophia walked into my office holding a USB drive. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. I nodded. "What is it?" She plugged the USB into my computer and opened a new report. "I think I've found a way to optimize the financial trend prediction algorithm. If applied, it could increase accuracy by 8%. I skimmed through the report before turning to her. "You did this on your own?" She nodded. I took a slow sip of my coffee before replying. "I'm impressed." Sophia smiled. No arrogance, no expectation of praise. Just pure pride in what she had accomplished. I looked out the window, watching the golden hues of the sunset wash over the city skyline. A year ago I had stood at Sophia's wedding, making sure she, and my entire family, saw that I was no longer the failure they believed me to be. But today, I realized that revenge no longer mattered. Because real success isn't about making others regret their mistakes. It's about creating opportunities for those who once failed to see, for those who once lacked strength, and most importantly, for myself, so I could keep moving forward without being chained to the past. I shut off my computer and stood up. "Sophia," I said gently, "want to grab dinner with me?" She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. "I'll pick the restaurant," she said, and I laughed. At last, we were no longer standing on opposite sides. And that was my greatest success. Catherine's story isn't just about a woman who defied her family's expectations and rose to success. It's proof of the power of perseverance, independence, and self-belief. In real life, we are often bound by the expectations of society and family. But true success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about creating opportunities to grow and helping others do the same. When we are strong enough to walk our own path, we don't need validation, because our achievements speak for themselves. What do you think about Catherine's journey? Would you have done the same in her position? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about family, career, and life lessons. I spent over $50,000 in a year to help my parents, but in the end, I realized that money couldn't buy their love. Every week, I gritted my teeth and sent $1,000, convincing myself that I was doing the right thing, that family is supposed to help each other. But no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. They always had another name to praise, another person to favor. That person was Emily. Emily, my younger sister, never had to worry about money for even a single day in her life. She didn't have to do anything except marry a wealthy man, and just like that, she suddenly became the family's pride and joy. My parents praised her as if she had single-handedly built a happy family, as if she were some financial genius. When in reality, Emily had never earned a single penny on her own, and me, I worked myself to exhaustion, drained every last cent I had, only to be treated like a walking ATM. When my dad lost his job, my mom called me in the middle of the night, her voice frantic, as if the world was about to end. "Olivia, honey, your dad got laid off. We don't know what to do anymore. The house, the bills, the electricity, the water, everything is piling up. If no one helps, we might have to sell the house." I sat there, gripping my phone, my heart pounding. I didn't have much money. I had rent to pay, insurance, my car, and student loans still hanging over my head. But how could I say no when my mother was crying on the other end of the line? "Mom, I'll send you the money, I won't let you lose the house." The very next day, the first $1,000 vanished from my account. At first, I thought I was doing the right thing. Helping family is the right thing to do, isn't it? But then, it became a bottomless pit. Every week, I would get messages from my mom. "Olivia, things are a little tight this week, can you send a bit more? Olivia, the electricity bill is really high this month, can you help? Olivia, sweetheart, we promise we'll pay you back, we just need a little help." And just like that, every penny I earned poured into that bottomless pit. While I cut back on my spending, skipped my morning coffees, and didn't dare buy myself a new pair of shoes, Emily continued living lavishly in her husband's mansion. Every time I visited home, I had to listen to my mom endlessly praise her. "Do you see how smart Emily is? She married the right man, no worries in life. Olivia, why don't you learn from your sister, stop overworking yourself and find a good man to marry?" I clenched my fists, swallowing the lump of anger rising in my throat. I didn't need anyone to provide for me. I stood on my own 2 feet. I had done everything I could to help my parents, and yet, they still didn't see me as something to be proud of? Things got worse when I started noticing strange signs. One day I got a message from my mom, complaining that they didn't have enough money to buy medicine. Without thinking twice, I sent them another $200. But just 2 days later, I was scrolling through Instagram and saw Emily's latest post. A picture with my parents. On a yacht. A luxury yacht. My heart pounded. I opened the photo, staring at their beaming faces. They were laughing, raising champagne glasses on the deck, while I, the one who had been sending them every hard-earned dollar, was stressing over my own bills. My mom had just told me they couldn't afford medicine, yet less than 48 hours later they were on a fancy yacht? A cold rage swelled inside me. Maybe I had been a fool all along. I stared at my phone screen. My parents, the same people who had been crying on the phone last week, telling me they couldn't afford basic necessities, were now standing on a yacht, holding champagne, smiling under the sun. And worst of all, Emily was there too. She was posing in a designer dress, her arm wrapped affectionately around my mother's shoulder, as if we were one big happy equal family. But in reality, I had drained myself financially to support them, while she hadn't spent a single cent and was still enjoying a life of luxury. I lowered my phone, trying to steady my breathing. I needed to get to the bottom of this. I couldn't turn a blind eye any longer. That evening, I called my mom. Mom, I'm planning a small dinner at my place this week, just family. Are you and Dad free? My mother's voice was hesitant. Oh, Olivia, I don't know. Your father and I aren't feeling well. We've been exhausted all week, aching all over. I froze. Not feeling well? They had just been on a yacht trip with Emily, and now they were claiming they had been exhausted all week? Anger flared inside me, but I kept my voice calm. Then I'll stop by, bring some food and medicine for you. My mother quickly responded, her tone slightly tense. No, don't come. I don't want you to catch anything. If you want to help, just send me a little money for medicine. I bit my lip. Money again. It was always about money. How much? I asked, pretending not to suspect anything. Just around $300. Once we're feeling better, we'll come visit you. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. All right, I'll send it right away. I ended the call, but instead of transferring the money, I grabbed my car keys. I needed the truth from them. I didn't go straight to my parents' house. I needed confirmation first. I drove to Mr. Harrison's house, the neighbor who lived right next door to my parents. He was a retired teacher who spent his afternoons tending to his garden. I parked in front of his house and walked up to the gate. Hi, Mr. Harrison. How have my parents been lately? I asked casually, trying to keep my emotions in check. Mr. Harrison looked up, resting both hands on his cane as he squinted at me. Oh, they just got back yesterday. Seemed like they had a great time. My stomach clenched. Just got back. I tried to sound nonchalant. I thought they had been home all week. Mr. Harrison chuckled. Oh no. They were on a trip with Emily and her husband. I think they went to Florida? A few days ago, they even asked me to feed their fish while they were gone. It felt like a bucket of ice water had been dumped over my head. They had lied. Not only had they tricked me into sending them money, but they had also ignored my calls the entire trip. I forced a stiff smile. Thanks, Mr. Harrison, I have to go now. I turned on my heels and walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. Enough. I wasn't going to let this slide. The next morning, I drove straight to my parents' house. Their car was parked in the driveway. From the outside, everything looked the same. Just an ordinary quiet house with no signs of luxury. But I knew the truth. I knocked on the door. My mother opened it, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. Olivia, I wasn't expecting you. Why didn't you call first so I could prepare? I stared at her, nausea rising in my throat at the falseness in her voice. I just wanted to check on you and Dad. I stepped inside. The house was spotless. Too spotless, like they had just come back from a vacation. Which, of course, they had. I glanced around. On the dining table, a few suitcases were still unpacked. A wide-brimmed hat rested carelessly on a chair, the exact same one Emily had worn in her Instagram photo. I turned back to my mother. So, how was the trip, Mom? The smile on her face stiffened. What trip? I let out a cold laugh. The trip to Florida. On the yacht, with Emily. You know, the trip where you lied to me about being sick so I'd send you more money? My mother's face flushed with embarrassment. I crossed my arms, waiting. At that moment, my father stepped out of the kitchen, staring at me. Olivia, what kind of tone is that? Watch your attitude. I let out a cold chuckle. Watch my attitude? I've sent you over $50,000 in a year. I've lost sleep worrying about you struggling. Meanwhile, you were on vacation, sipping champagne, lying to me just to get more money? My mother quickly interjected. You're blowing this out of proportion. Can't your parents take a break? I clenched my fists. A break? You told me to send money because you couldn't afford medicine. You didn't even tell me you were going away. Why don't I have the right to know? My father folded his arms, his voice cold. We don't have to report everything we do to you. I nodded, feeling my heart grow colder with every passing second. Then I don't have to send you another dime. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and right in front of them, I canceled all my recurring transfers. My mother panicked. Olivia, don't do this, we need that money. I shoved my phone into my pocket, my eyes sharp as knives. Then ask Emily, I've had enough. And with that, I turned on my heel and walked out, leaving their desperate pleas and frantic voices behind. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had no control. I slammed my car door shut, taking a deep breath to steady myself. But nothing could cool the rage boiling inside me. My parents had deceived me. Not only had they lied about needing money, but they had shamelessly enjoyed a luxurious life using the very money I had worked myself to the bone to earn. And now, when caught, they were playing the victims. No, I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I pushed open the door and walked into the house without knocking. I knew this house too well. The familiar scent of my mother's cooking, the old couch where I used to spend hours watching movies as a kid. But now, that feeling was gone. I no longer felt like this was my home. My mother looked up from the kitchen table, her eyes flashing with worry when she saw me walk back in. Olivia, why are you back? I strode straight into the living room, my voice ice cold. You lied to me. She quickly looked away, but I didn't let her escape. You said you weren't feeling well, but in reality you were sipping cocktails on a yacht. You asked for money for medicine, but it was really for a vacation with Emily. You say I'm family, but you've never treated me like one. My mother stood up, crossing her arms. You're overreacting, Olivia. It was just a short trip. I don't understand why you're so angry. I let out a bitter laugh. You don't understand? Fine, let me spell it out for you. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and scrolled through my list of transactions. For the past year, I've sent you over $50,000. You told me you were struggling, that I was your only hope. Meanwhile, Emily, the daughter you worship, hasn't given you a single penny. And now? You're telling me I'm overreacting? My father stepped out of the bedroom, his voice deep and cold. Olivia, don't talk to your mother like that. I turned to him, my voice sharp as a blade. And how exactly should I talk to her? Should I stay silent and keep sending money without question? Should I pretend nothing happened? My father folded his arms, his face unreadable. We don't have to explain every dollar we spend to you. A bitter smirk crept onto my lips. Then I don't have to keep funding you either. The room fell so silent I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. My mother's face went pale. Olivia, you can't do this. I held up my phone, scrolled to my automatic transfers, and canceled every single one. Right in front of them. I can't? Watch me. One tap. Every dollar they had been expecting from me, gone. My father gritted his teeth, his eyes dark with frustration. You're being selfish. You're just mad that we didn't invite you on the trip, aren't you? This is just jealousy over Emily. I froze. A fire erupted in my chest. I took a step closer, looking him dead in the eye. Jealousy? I let out a hollow, icy laugh. Do you have any idea how hard I worked for that money? While you were vacationing, I was working overtime. While you were praising Emily, I was giving up so much to help you. And after everything, you tell me I'm just jealous? My mother cut in. You're being too sensitive, Olivia. We just wanted to have a little fun. Why do you have to make this such a big deal? I took a deep breath. Because you turned me into an ATM. No one said a word. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my voice. You need someone to take care of you? Fine. Emily is perfect. Isn't she? Let her do it. My mother flinched. Emily can't. Oh, why not? She lives in a mansion, has a rich husband, travels without a care in the world. She's your golden child. Isn't she? So why can't she help you? My father's face darkened with anger. Do you really want to cut ties with your family? I stared at him. No, you did that a long time ago. I'm just realizing it now. My mother's eyes welled up with tears. You're going to regret this, Olivia. Family is supposed to help each other. I narrowed my eyes. No, Mom, family is supposed to respect and love each other, not use them. I turned around and walked out, leaving behind my mother's desperate calls and my father's cold stare. For the first time, I felt relieved to finally say what had been weighing on my chest. I had barely stepped into my house when my phone started buzzing nonstop. Mom. Dad. Emily. They kept calling as if I had committed some unforgivable crime. I didn't need to guess what they wanted to say, pleading, guilt-tripping, maybe even threats. But I didn't care anymore. I had endured enough. I flipped my phone face down on the table, closed my eyes and took a deep breath. But before I could regain my composure, loud knocking pounded at my door. My parents? No way. I stood up, walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. Emily? And behind her, my parents stood with their arms crossed, their faces tight with anger. I opened the door but didn't let them in. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice void of warmth. Emily smirked, folding her arms as if she was talking to someone beneath her. I could ask you the same thing, Olivia. What the hell do you think you're doing? I let out a small chuckle. Doing what I should have done a long time ago. Emily's eyes narrowed. You mean cutting off Mom and Dad? You're so petty, Olivia. All this over not being invited on a trip? I clenched my fists but kept my voice calm. No, because they used me for a year, lied to me over and over again, and now that I'm no longer their financial puppet, they sent you to convince me to change my mind? My father scoffed. Olivia, you're being disgraceful. I turned to him, my expression blank. You think standing up for myself is disgraceful? Then so be it. Emily let out a mocking laugh. Oh, come on, Olivia. You're not that tough. You're just throwing a tantrum. We're family. You can't do this to Mom and Dad. She stepped forward, about to push her way in, but I raised a hand to stop her. Don't step inside. Emily's eyes widened in disbelief, as if she couldn't fathom that I would dare to block her. You can't be serious. You won't last without helping them. A voice spoke up behind me. Wrong. She's learning how to live without being used by her family. Natalie. She stepped out of the living room, arms crossed, her eyes filled with defiance. Emily sneered. Oh, great, now your girlfriend thinks she can interfere in family matters. I saw Natalie's expression darken. Family? Don't make me laugh. Your parents see Olivia as nothing but a human ATM. They don't actually care about her. Emily clicked her tongue, shaking her head. You don't understand anything. Family supports each other in hard times. You don't know anything about us. Natalie stepped forward, her voice dropping into a dangerously low tone. Do you understand the difference between helping and being used? Or are you just another leech, living off other people's money like your parents? Emily flinched, her face turning red. Don't you dare insult me. I saw Natalie's hand twitch, and in the blink of an eye she grabbed a fistful of Emily's hair. Emily shrieked, struggling, but Natalie didn't let go right away. Listen to me, Emily. You and your parents will never take advantage of Olivia again. If you show up here one more time, don't expect me to be polite. Emily gasped when Natalie finally released her. She staggered back, her eyes blazing with fury and humiliation. Are you insane? Emily shouted, rubbing her head. My mother lunged forward, her voice shrill with outrage. Olivia, you're letting your girlfriend attack your own sister? Have you lost your mind? I crossed my arms, staring at them. No, Emily deserved it. My father took a step forward, his voice seething with anger. You need to control your girlfriend, she just assaulted our daughter. I laughed. Oh? And what about Emily barging into my home, insulting me and demanding my money? That's fine with you? Silence. I took a slow breath, my voice icy. And listen carefully. This is the last time we will ever speak. Don't call me. Don't come to my house. From now on, I owe this family nothing. Emily's eyes burned with fury, her lips trembling. You'll regret this, Olivia. You'll come crawling back, begging Mom and Dad for help. I met her gaze without a flicker of doubt. Never. Emily gritted her teeth, spun on her heel, and stormed off. My parents followed quietly, their faces rigid with anger. When the door slammed shut, I felt lighter than I had in years. But I knew this wasn't over. My parents wouldn't let this go. Emily wouldn't accept defeat so easily. And I wasn't wrong. Just a few days later they returned, this time, with backup. I was sitting on my couch, scrolling through my phone, when furious knocking echoed through my apartment. I didn't even need to check the peephole to know who it was. I opened the door. Emily, and Dan. Her husband loomed behind her, broad-shouldered and intimidating. Like he was here to teach me a lesson. Emily crossed her arms, her lips curling into a sneer. So you really think you can just walk away from this family that easily? I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. I don't think, I know. Emily's eyes flared with anger. You don't get to cut off mom and dad. You think you can just abandon your responsibilities? Family is forever, Olivia. I smirked. A family that exploits each other isn't a family at all. Dan stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. You should rethink this, Olivia. I stared straight at him, unflinching. Oh yeah? And what if I don't? His lips curled into a smug grin. Then I'll make you regret it. Natalie stepped out from behind me, standing right by my side, her eyes razor-sharp. Oh? And how exactly are you planning to do that? Hit a woman? Pathetic. Dan scoffed, but I saw his fists clench. He took another step forward. But I didn't give him the chance. I struck first. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him staggering back. Emily shrieked. Olivia, are you crazy? Dan stumbled, his eyes wide with shock. But I wasn't done. My second punch slammed into his gut, knocking the wind out of him. He doubled over, coughing, clutching his stomach, his face contorted in pain. Emily rushed forward, grabbing him, her eyes burning with hatred. You just made a huge mistake. I exhaled sharply, my fists still clenched. No. You made a mistake thinking I was still your family's puppet. Emily bared her teeth, looking like a cornered animal. All right, Olivia. If you want war, we'll have war. I let out a cold, amused laugh. No, Emily, you've already lost, you just don't realize it yet. She hauled Dan up, the two of them stumbling away from my porch. I watched them disappear into the night. I wasn't afraid. They were losing control and they knew it. 1 week later, I thought it was over. But then, I got a call from Mr. Martin, my parents' neighbor. Olivia, got a minute? There's something you might want to hear. I gripped my phone, sensing something was off. Yes, of course, what is it? Mr. Martin chuckled lightly. Well, last night, your parents had a nasty argument. The whole neighborhood could hear it. I frowned. What were they fighting about? You, and Emily. I sat up straight. Emily? What happened? Mr. Martin lowered his voice, as if someone might overhear. They demanded she start supporting them financially since you cut them off, but she refused. I was silent. You know what, Olivia? She yelled at them, saying she wasn't a bank and that your parents should take responsibility for their own lives instead of leeching off their children. I laughed. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Mr. Martin chuckled. Sure does. I guess she enjoyed the luxury, but she didn't want the burden you carried. She stormed out that night after tearing them apart. I let out a long breath. It was over. My parents lost both their children in the span of a week. No more Olivia to provide for them, no more Emily to cling to. Just the two of them, sitting in an empty house, realizing they had destroyed everything with their own hands. I set my phone down on the table and leaned back in my chair. Natalie walked out of the kitchen, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Any news? I took one, sipped it, then smiled faintly. My parents just lost their last child. Natalie raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I placed the cup down, looking at her with more relief than I had ever felt before. Emily left them, they have no one left to leech off. Natalie chuckled. Well, so even their golden princess couldn't take it anymore. I nodded. She was only ever interested in luxury, never actually helping them. Now, she's turned her back on them too. Natalie leaned back, narrowing her eyes at me. So, do you feel sorry for them? I thought for a moment. Then I shook my head. Not one bit. They deserved this. 1 week later. I thought that after Emily left, my parents would figure things out. But I was wrong. My phone rang nonstop all morning. At first I ignored it, but when I saw my father's name on the screen, I decided to pick up. Olivia. His voice was slower than usual. I crossed my arms, leaning against the kitchen counter, my tone calm. What is it? Why are you calling me? A long silence. I could hear him sigh heavily. I'm not calling to ask for money. It's about Emily. I narrowed my eyes. What about her? He hesitated for a moment before finally speaking. Her husband divorced her, Dan kicked her out. She has nowhere to go, so she came back here. I raised an eyebrow. Really? My father sighed. She's completely broken, Olivia. She's lost everything. I let out a small, emotionless laugh. Lost everything? You mean she lost the rich man she clung to all these years, or the luxurious life she never built for herself? Olivia. His voice dropped, almost pleading. I cut him off. And what exactly do you want me to do? Comfort her? Tell her I forgive her? She needs someone to talk to. You're her sister. I gripped my phone tightly. Have you forgotten, Dad? I stopped being her sister a long time ago. 1 week earlier. Emily lasted exactly 3 days before she exploded. After I refused to fund them, my parents turned to her, demanding financial help. You've got to be kidding me, Emily snapped. My parents froze. My mother wrung her hands, trying to keep her voice soft. Honey, you know we need someone to help. Emily laughed, but there was no humor in it. Help? You want me to help? Why should I? Why should I take on the burden that Olivia was stupid enough to carry? My father frowned. Because we're family, Emily. For the first time in her life, Emily didn't care about the word family. No, you used Olivia for years, and now that she's cut you off, you turn to me? I'm not as stupid as Olivia. My mother's eyes widened, her voice shaking. Emily, you can't say that. Emily stood up, her face red with rage. Oh, I can't? You've gotten too used to having someone take care of you without putting in any effort. I'm not an ATM, and I don't owe you anything. My father slammed his hand on the table. You can't just abandon us like this. Emily let out a bitter laugh. Abandon you? I'm just doing what you did to Olivia all these years. She grabbed her purse, her voice seething with fury. Figure it out yourselves. The door slammed shut. Emily left that night, leaving my parents in an empty house. I put my phone on speaker so Natalie could hear. She crossed her arms, watching me with curiosity as my father continued. Olivia, you don't understand. Emily is truly devastated. Dan threw her out the second she stopped being valuable to him. She has no money, no home, nothing. She can't even go back to her friends because they only cared about Dan's money. I leaned back, taking a sip of coffee. What a shame. My father hesitated, clearly unsettled by my indifferent tone. Olivia, can you just go see her once just to talk? I smirked, shaking my head even though he couldn't see me. No. He sounded like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Olivia. I cut him off. Do you remember what Emily used to say when I was supporting you all those years? Silence. I continued. She called me stupid for giving you money. She told me I'd regret cutting you off. She stood at my doorstep insulting me, saying I had no right to refuse this family. And now? Now she's back, empty-handed, unwelcome, and she expects me to be generous? I laughed, a cold, hollow laugh. No, Dad, I'm not doing that. I heard him let out a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. So you really don't need this family anymore. I closed my eyes, feeling the relief spread through me. I did that a long time ago, Dad, you just never wanted to accept it. I hung up. Natalie raised an eyebrow at me. You okay? I set my phone down on the table, taking a deep breath. More than ever. My parents had no one left to rely on. Emily had realized she was just another disposable pawn, once she lost her value. And me? I was finally free from all of them. 3 years later. I never thought I'd return to that house. 3 years ago, I walked away from my parents, leaving them to deal with the consequences of their choices. Emily had left too, once she realized she couldn't use my parents to secure an easy life. They lost both their children in a single week. At the time, I felt no regret. I had spent my entire life chasing their approval, only to be met with disregard and exploitation. But over the years, I came to understand something. They weren't entirely evil, they were just lost. And now, after all these years, I stood before that old door, wondering if it was ever truly a place I could call home. I knocked. The door opened and my mother appeared. She stared at me, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Olivia?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Hi, Mom." Before I could react, she lunged forward, wrapping her arms around me as if afraid I'd disappear. I heard her sobbing against my shoulder. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I stood still for a moment, then gently hugged her back. "I know." My father stepped out from the living room. His hair had turned grayer than I remembered. When he saw me, he froze, then took a deep breath and walked forward. "Olivia." I looked at him, and for the first time in years, I didn't see anger or stubborn pride in his eyes. Only regret. "I'm sorry." 3 words. The ones I had waited for all these years. I smiled softly. "I know, Dad." We sat down in the living room, where I once had happy memories before everything fell apart. There was no blame, no resentment, just a family trying to mend the past. After a while, I hesitated before asking, "Where's Emily?" My mother gave a small, sad smile. "She's changed a lot. After losing everything, she realized she couldn't rely on others forever. She picked herself up, found a job, and learned how to stand on her own." I was surprised. "Really?" My mother nodded. "She's always wanted to talk to you but was too afraid. She thought you'd never forgive her." I sighed, then pulled out my phone. "I'll call her." My mother smiled, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Olivia." The phone rang a few times before Emily's voice came through. "Hello?" I took a deep breath. "Emily, it's me." A long silence, then I heard a shaky breath on the other end. You're really calling me?" I smiled. "Yes. We need to talk. 3 years of distance, of wounds, of misunderstandings. But in the end, we found our way back to each other. Family isn't perfect. But if everyone is willing to change, they can still find their way home." Olivia's story is a powerful reminder about setting boundaries and self-worth. Sometimes, the people we love most are the ones who exploit us the most, hiding their manipulation under the label of family. But no one is obligated to sacrifice themselves unconditionally, especially when that sacrifice is taken for granted. Olivia spent years learning that kindness should never be taken advantage of, and cutting off toxic relationships isn't selfish, it's the only way to protect oneself. Yet, the greatest happiness came when Olivia chose to forgive and return, giving her family a second chance. What do you think of Olivia's story? If you were in her situation, would you continue to help cut ties to protect yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more real-life emotional stories about family and life. I received her letter on the very day the funeral ended. Everyone was busy arguing over who would get the antique set, who would take the diamond necklace she used to wear every Thanksgiving. No one noticed me, quietly slipping into the car, opening the dark cream envelope with the familiar shaky handwriting. "Don't let them see you have anything, Mia. People's true nature only shows when they think you've got nothing left to lose," she wrote. I thought her final words would be full of love and tears like in the movies. But no. Instead, they were a survival lesson. And a $36 million financial empire. When my grandmother, Margaret Whitmore, passed away at 87, everyone in the family remembered her as the eccentric old lady living in a wooden house in Vermont. With her hand-knitted sweaters, worn-out slippers, and afternoon tea always with exactly 3 sugar cubes, She never showed any sign that she had once been the most powerful woman in Massachusetts real estate investment. Even my mother, Karen Whitmore Hayes, only saw her as a grumpy, stubborn, and ridiculously stingy old woman. She never gave us a dime when my mom got divorced, never paid for my college tuition, never sent expensive gifts during the holidays. She only gave books, and every time I got excited, my mom would glare at me and say, "Mia, you don't need more fairy tale nonsense." But that envelope wasn't a fairy tale. It came with a thick stack of documents from a law firm I had never heard of, confirming that I was the sole heir of Margaret. Not my mother, not my stepfather Rick, not even my brother, Logan, the tech genius who failed startup after startup, but still got praised by Mom as the one who will save this family. Me, a 25-year-old bookstore manager at a tiny independent shop called Maple Pages, earning $2,400 a month, now owned 12 properties spanning 3 states, from Boston to Seattle, controlling shares in 3 investment companies. A diversified investment portfolio worth $36 million, steadily growing for over a decade. And attached to the will was a nearly 2-page handwritten letter she had written to me before passing. "Mia, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. But don't cry. I don't need tears. I need you to be stronger and smarter than anyone in this family. Don't let them know what you have. Don't tell your mother, Logan, or anyone. They won't see you as family anymore, just a walking safe." I sat frozen in the car for almost an hour after reading it. In my head echoed my mother's complaint from yesterday. "Your grandmother left us nothing but a bunch of musty old books and broke people's ideals." I almost laughed. That musty smell could now buy her entire neighborhood twice. But I didn't say a word. I didn't argue. I didn't flaunt. I chose silence. From that day on, I started living a double life. I still worked at Maple Pages, still made coffee every morning, restocked shelves, answered questions about Murakami books. I still lived in the tiny apartment upstairs. And no one knew I owned the entire building plus the 3 houses next door. I let everyone believe I was still struggling. Still poor Mia. My mother pitied me even more. "Sweet Mia's too kind but doesn't have a clue about life," she'd tell the neighbors every time I visited. They thought I was weak, naive, poor, and easy to manipulate. I let them think that. Every time Logan posted pictures of his vacation in Cabo with the caption, "A fresh start for my next startup," I quietly smiled. One of the investment accounts I'd just reviewed the monthly budget for had acquired a small tech company, the very one he didn't know had gone bankrupt 6 months ago. Every time my mom called to complain about gas prices, electricity bills, and then vaguely hinted, "Mia, have you saved a bit? I want to buy Logan a new laptop so he can start again." I reminded myself, not yet. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for the right moment. Because as my grandmother once said, true power isn't about how much money you have. It's about when you choose to let others know you have it. On Monday morning, I made myself a latte with Maple Pages' squeaky old coffee machine, poured it into a chipped ceramic mug, and walked back to the front counter. The electricity bill was barely clipped to the notice board, faded from the sunlight streaming through the dusty window. I stood there, holding the inventory notebook, pretending to be lost in numbers. Just your typical bookstore manager juggling to keep her beloved but fragile job afloat. No one knew that right above this old bookstore was my apartment, redesigned into a discreet meeting room, where I had once signed a $2,300,000 contract to acquire a commercial property in downtown Boston. No one knew that the same computer I used to check inventory was also where I monitored the global investment portfolios of Carter Holdings, one of the shell companies I set up under the name Margaret Legacy Trust. A name old-fashioned enough to raise no suspicion. And of course no one suspected that I was the CEO, the one with full control over more than $25 million in actively managed assets each day. "Mia's sweet but foolish," my mother would say every time I declined an invitation to family gatherings, where all eyes would inevitably be on Logan, the 22-year-old genius little brother who still couldn't land a stable job. Logan had failed 2 rounds of fundraising, burned through over $300,000 of Mom's investment, yet she still praised him like he was the reincarnation of Steve Jobs. "Logan just needs a little more time," she'd say. "He has vision. He's not like the rest." And me? I graduated with honors in economics from Tufts University. I paid for all of it through scholarships and juggling 3 part-time jobs every semester. But no one in the family remembers that. All they see is that I work at a bookstore and drive an old 2009 Ford Focus. Once, at a party celebrating Logan's fresh new startup, his 3rd attempt really, my mom pulled me aside, giving me a disappointed once-over. "Mia, you should at least wear a little makeup. Serena, Aunt Linda's daughter, she's just a secretary but dresses like a CEO." I just smirked, thinking back to that very morning when I'd approved the acquisition of our 8th commercial building in Chicago's financial district. I didn't need to dress like a CEO. I was the CEO. Sometimes I wondered if they were truly blind, or if they were just deliberately choosing not to see me. As if I were a shadow in the grand story they believed Logan was the main character of. One Friday afternoon my mom called, her voice unusually cheerful. "Mia, this weekend Logan's presenting a new idea for a pet connection app. We're throwing a little party. I've invited a few influential people in tech. Make sure you dress nicely, okay?" I pressed my lips together, mentally counting the 3 tech companies I held controlling shares in, one of which had just declined Logan's pitch for funding last week. "I'll stop by. Don't be late like last time, you made me look bad." I hung up, took a deep breath, and opened my laptop. In 10 minutes, I finished reviewing the weekly report from Trident Financial, the finance firm under the holding group I manage. One line stood out. Hayes family. Rising debt. Poor credit. 2 new loans approved in the past month. Hayes family, that's my parents. They had mortgaged the house again. And I, through layers of shell companies, was the one who had acquired that loan. I didn't need threats, I just watched. One evening after work, I stopped by my mom's house, the red brick home in Newton's pricey neighborhood. Inside, the chandelier was still bright, the dinner table laid with imported cheese, Italian wine, and Logan sat with his legs up on the sofa, enthusiastically pitching to a group of potential investors about an app that lets cats pick their food using scent sensors. My mom looked down at me from the stairs, shaking her head. "Goodness, Mia, why'd you drive that old car here? Do you know what the neighbors must think?" "Probably that I'm not living off my mother," I replied. She went quiet, then turned away without a word. That was fine. I didn't need praise from someone who had spent a lifetime subtly cutting me down with words wrapped in velvet. And Logan, after that party, asked for another $80,000 to complete the beta version. My mother took out that amount, using a credit card with one of the highest interest rates on the market. I knew, because I'd just received the loan approval report. Addressed to the headquarters of M&L Credit Group, one of the finance companies I own through my 4th holding. They had no idea I was present in every link of their slow collapse. And I was still waiting. Patiently. Because in this game, the one who smiles last is the real winner. Winter came early in Newton, and colder than usual. Snow covered my mother's walkway, but the usual snow-clearing crew was gone. I noticed it when I slipped, climbing the icy front steps. The door opened, and my mother stood there with a forced smile, unable to hide the fatigue in her eyes. She no longer wore her signature pearl necklace, replacing it with a gold-plated chain now slightly tarnished. The Italian leather sofa in the living room had been swapped for a faux leather version, and the Persian rug at the entrance was gone. I quietly noted every detail. "You know," my mother sighed. "We've temporarily let the staff go. The pandemic, rising costs. Times are tough for everyone." I nodded, saying nothing. But I knew there was no new pandemic, only the creeping shadow of debt tightening around the Hayes family's neck. And they had no idea the noose had been tied by me. Logan still lived as if he were on top of the world. Just 3 weeks after my mother quietly sold her old engagement ring to pay the electric bill, Logan drove a brand new Tesla Model X to the bookstore where I worked. He wore a leather jacket, Balenciaga sunglasses, and strutted in like he was scouting a location for the empire he imagined himself building. "You're still here?" Logan smirked, glancing around with thinly veiled disdain. "This place smells like old books and stale coffee. Must be therapeutic, huh?" I gave a soft smile. "Very therapeutic. And you? That app? The one where cats order their own food, still going well?" Logan burst out laughing. "It's evolved. Now I'm partnering with an AI team to develop intelligent pet care software. $1 billion market. I'm negotiating with a major VC fund, might raise 4-5 million. I knew the major VC fund he was talking about was Larchmont Ventures, a firm that had just rejected Logan's pitch as unrealistic, financially unsound, and non-viable. I also knew because I was the controlling shareholder of Larchmont Ventures. A few weeks later, my mom called me, whispering like she was afraid someone might overhear. "Mia, do you have a bit of cash? Just a few thousand. I need to pay the club membership. Fix the water heater." I set the phone down, breathing slowly. I had just reviewed her credit report the day before. 4 credit cards overdue, and she had just received a notice that her privileges at Wellesley Hills Country Club had been revoked. I kept my tone light. "Mom, is the club really that important? Important enough to pretend it's a water heater repair?" Silence. Then a long, heavy sigh. I just don't want to lose face. My friends are there. They've been asking why I haven't shown up. I can't tell them I lost my card. I just need a few more months. Logan's launching his new platform soon. Everything will be fine." Nothing was going to be fine. I knew my parents had refinanced the house for the 3rd time in 2 years, the latest through a finance firm called Willow Fund LLC, a name that sounded unfamiliar but was actually a shell I created, with the entire loan under my control. I knew my father had begun quietly selling off stock in the company where he used to be a director, trying to cover up hidden debts. I knew my mother had sold her Chanel handbag collection, what she once proudly called irreplaceable class, to pay for the Tesla that Logan didn't even know was registered under her name. But the most painful part wasn't seeing them fall into hardship. It was that they still clung to the illusion, still poured money into the fantasy of Logan the genius, still saw me as the clueless poor girl who works at a bookstore. One Tuesday evening, I was working in the upstairs office when the doorbell rang insistently. I went down to open it. It was my mother. She was wearing a long coat, lips pale, hands trembling as she held a paper envelope. "Mia, I need your help, really. The house is about to be repossessed. I can't tell Logan, it would break him." I took the envelope. Inside was a copy of the foreclosure notice from Harborstone Financial, a subsidiary of Hawthorne Holdings, the name I created so they wouldn't know who was behind it. I looked at my mother, feeling empty inside. I thought Logan was about to launch a billion-dollar company. "He just needs more time. I just need your help this once." I nodded slowly. "All right, go home, let me see what I can do." She walked away, her steps heavy. I stood there for a long time, watching her figure fade into the snowy night. Back in the office, I opened my laptop. An email from my lawyer was already waiting in my inbox. "Ready to send foreclosure notice as scheduled." I placed my hand on the mouse. For the first time in years, my heart pounded like it did when I was a child giving a class presentation. I didn't hate them, but I wouldn't protect them anymore. The truth would come out, and none of them were ready for it. 3 days later, my mother came to the bookstore. No warning, no text, no call. She burst through the door like she was running from something, eyes red, mascara streaked down her cheeks. I stood behind the counter, set the notebook down, trying to keep my voice calm. "What's going on, Mom?" She exhaled shakily, pulled a stack of house documents and another notice from Harborstone Financial out of her bag. The third one I'd seen this month. "Mia, they said if we don't pay in 5 more days, they'll take the house." I have nothing left, I need your help. I looked up at her. Her hair was messy, no longer pinned with her usual gold clip. The Louis Vuitton purse she always carried had been replaced with a worn canvas bag. She looked like the crumbling house itself, still trying to stand tall, but rotting from the inside. I held back the bitter ache rising in my chest, not out of pity, but resentment. All those years, she'd called me incompetent, average, lacking potential. And now she was begging the same daughter she once regretted having, saying she shouldn't have been born. I kept my face calm. Mom, I work at this bookstore. I make $2,400 a month, after rent, utilities, food. I opened the drawer, pulled out a stack of small bills and counted them. I have exactly $3,000 saved. Do you need all of it? She stared at me, stunned. Then her expression turned to anger. Mia, you can't be this selfish. This is your house too, you grew up there. If we lose it, what do you think will happen to us? Did you think about that when you refinanced the house a third time, to buy Logan that Rolex? She froze. He needs to maintain his image for investors. He has a future. He's this family's last hope. And what am I, Mom? I asked, still gently. The good-for-nothing you call when you're desperate? The rest of the time? I'm just the useless bookstore clerk. She fell silent. After a while she started breathing heavily, then slammed her hand on the counter. I raised you, I fed you, put you through school, and now you're counting dollars on me like a stranger? I clenched my hands under the counter but smiled. I paid for college myself, Mom. I remember clearly because you said, there's no money, it all went to Logan. I worked 3 jobs for 4 straight years. Do you remember that? She looked at me as if she couldn't understand the language I was speaking. I gently pushed the stack of documents back toward her. I'm sorry, but I can't help. That money is all I have. That evening, my father called. No small talk, no asking how I was. He got straight to the point, his voice sharp and commanding, like every time he used to yell at me when I was a kid. Mia, your mother said you refused to help. Do you have any idea this family is on the brink? I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window. Chicago at night glittered outside. My office was on the 39th floor, where every signed contract could shift the fate of an entire bloodline. I know, but I don't have much to help with either. Did you forget? I just work at a bookstore. Cut that tone right now, he barked. This isn't the time for jokes. You're a daughter of this family. You can't let your parents lose everything like this. I stayed silent for a moment, then asked, what about Logan? Why don't you ask him? He's prepping for a new round of funding. He needs to keep up appearances. Sweetheart, you don't understand. This world is harsh, especially for young men. Logan has to maintain his image. I let out a soft, steel-egged laugh. And women? They don't need to maintain anything? My father didn't answer. A minute later his voice dropped, heavy. If you won't help, then from now on, you're no longer my daughter. I sat still, quietly ended the call. Not a single tear. The next day I received a report from my private attorney. All the Hayes family's credit card debt, mortgages and business loans had officially been acquired by Mia Whitmore Holdings, the shell company I had created. From this day forward, every decision regarding the house, the assets, the credit cards, and even Logan's outstanding student loans were under my control. I texted my lawyer. Begin the process. Send payment demand notice. 10-day deadline. I returned to the bookstore, made myself a cup of mint tea. There weren't many customers. The soft light spilled across the dusty windows. A strange, calm silence filled the air. I sat there, my hand resting gently on a stack of old ledgers, and smiled. They thought I had nothing. And I let them believe that for the past 3 years. But not anymore. The game had begun, and I was the one holding the deck. That morning was cold and gray, the kind of bleakness only found on a day of reckoning. I parked the sleek black Mercedes outside the Suffolk County Courthouse wearing a light brown trench coat, my hair in a neat bun, makeup subtle but deliberate. No one could recognize poor bookstore girl Mia, in the figure seated silently behind the wheel. I arrived 20 minutes early, not to prepare the documents, everything had been ready for days, but to observe. To witness the exact moment the Hayes family would officially fall out of their perfect facade. At exactly 8:41 a.m., Logan's scratched silver Tesla rolled into the parking lot. My parents stepped out, straightening their coats, trying to keep composed faces, though my mother's eyes were bloodshot, and my father walked as if the whole world weighed on his back. Logan still wore sunglasses, dragging a file case behind him without so much as glancing at our parents. They didn't know I was there. To them, I was still just a shadow behind the bookstore counter, far from any real power play. Courtroom 6 was packed, partly media because the name Hayes Enterprises had once been a respected brand in northeastern real estate, and partly finance people curious to see who the main creditor was, the one bringing this family to ruin in just 3 years. Judge Wanda Ellison, known for her no-nonsense stance on high society bankruptcies, entered. She struck the gavel. Civil bankruptcy hearing number 4928, defendants, the Hayes family. She glanced at the file, then looked up. Primary creditor, please confirm your presence. I stood up. A murmur spread through the courtroom like a cold wind. My father whipped around, my mother's mouth fell open, and Logan dropped the phone he was holding. "I'm Mia Whitmore," I said clearly, "the legal representative of Whitmore Holdings, the company that currently owns all of the defendants' outstanding debts, with a total estimated value of $12,700,000. "No way," my mother whispered, her face pale. "Mia, what is this?" my father stammered. "Don't you work at a bookstore?" I turned to them, calm to the point of being unsettling. "I still do. I love reading, but that's not all I am." Judge Ellison nodded. "Please continue, Ms. Whitmore." I opened my briefcase, pulled out the carefully prepared documents, and placed them on the table. Over the past 3 years, the defendants have refinanced their house 3 times, taken out 6 large consumer loans from 5 different financial institutions, and accumulated numerous overlapping credit card debts. All current lending entities have been acquired by Whitmore Holdings, and I am the legal representative. "Mia, how could you do this to your own family?" My mother sobbed. "You're my daughter. You said I wasn't your daughter anymore when I refused to give you my last $3,000 in savings. Do you remember that?" The entire room fell silent. I continued. "However, I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came to offer an opportunity." I placed another folder on the table, sliding it toward the family's lawyer. "This is a debt restructuring proposal. If accepted, all debts will be retained, without further collection, under 3 mandatory conditions." Judge Ellison nodded for me to proceed. I glanced at Logan, then my parents. Condition 1. Logan Hayes will have all access to family credit accounts revoked. He must find a job. No startups, no fundraising, no life-changing ideas. His first job has already been arranged. Sales associate at Pet King Pet Store in Roxbury. Hourly wage, $15. "What?" Logan shot up, furious. "You can't force me to take some garbage job like that. I'm a founder, You're a burden," I cut in coldly. "And it's time you learned the value of a real hour of labor." The judge banged her gavel. "Please continue, Miss Whitmore." I nodded. Condition 2. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes must enroll in a mandatory 12-month financial counseling program, with weekly spending reports, and may not exceed a personal budget of $2,500 per month. My father clenched his jaw, my mother continued to sob. "The final condition," I said slowly. "The family must sell the Newton mansion within 45 days. I've already purchased a smaller house, located in a quiet area of Worcester. 3 bedrooms, a loft, a backyard with a plum tree. Enough to live, not to show off." The air in the courtroom thickened. Judge Ellison flipped through the documents. "This is the most generous restructuring offer I've ever seen. Counsel for the defendants, does your client agree?" The lawyer whispered something to my father. After a moment, he nodded, his face like he had just swallowed ice. "We accept." I closed the folder, stood up and smiled. Not out of victory, but because the truth had finally come to light. As I stepped out of the courtroom, I heard footsteps rushing behind me. "Mia, why?" my mother gasped, no longer angry, only broken. I turned around, eyes steady. "Because you need to understand, I'm not the foolish little girl from the bookstore. I'm the last person you should have underestimated." An hour after the hearing ended, I stood on the front steps of the Suffolk County Courthouse. The wind whipped through my trench coat like it was tearing the final page from a long chapter. Logan sat slumped on a bench near the parking lot, his face drained of color. My mother, her perfectly groomed hair now in disarray, clutched a canvas bag like it was the last thing she had left. My father said nothing, staring at the ground, his forehead damp with sweat. No one dared come near me, no one asked anything, not a single word of reproach. They had no choice left. Pride was now a luxury they could no longer afford. 3 days later, I received a confirmation email from the car dealership. Logan's pearl-white Porsche Taycan had been repossessed, and per my instructions, a 2015 ash-gray Toyota Corolla had been delivered to the new address in Worcester. No sunroof, no heated seats, no premium sound system. But enough to get to work, if he was actually willing to go. Logan's message came in at 2:14 a.m., just one line. "You've ruined my life." I didn't reply, because he needed to learn that his life wasn't ruined by me, but by the privileges he never deserved in the first place. The mansion in Newton was listed for 20% below market value. I was the buyer, through a small branch of Whitmore Holdings. This time, no corporate signage, no press coverage, just an ordinary real estate transaction. I didn't need anyone to know. I only needed them to know. My mother called one last time before the move. "Mia, I just want to ask, why Worcester?" Her voice was hoarse, stripped of bitterness, with no trace of threat. I smiled softly through the phone. "Because it's quiet, and affordable. But, I don't belong in a place like that. I used to think the same about myself when you said I wasn't classy enough to sit at the Blackwell family table." Silence stretched. Then she said something I never thought I'd hear from her. "I'm sorry." I didn't know if it was sincere or simply born of desperation, but I didn't need to find out. I just replied quietly. "I hope that for the first time in your life you live in reality, no illusions, no lies." The following week, I attended a high-end fashion exhibition in New York, not to shop, but to meet the designer behind the brand Elysian, the label that had produced the frilly green dress my mother forced me to wear to Logan's honor party last year. At the time she had said, "You have to wear this, it makes you look expensive. At least it'll make people think you have some value." I didn't argue. I endured the judgmental looks, the whispers behind my back, and the feeling of being shackled in lace and gemstones. But today was different. I shook hands with the designer, handed him the acquisition folder. Whitmore Holdings had just officially acquired the entire Elysian brand, and the first thing I did was issue an internal notice to discontinue the Glimmergrace line. The very green dress model. After the meeting I called my mother. She picked up on the fifth ring. "That green dress," I began, "that design is gone, permanently." "What?" "I bought the company. And I've eliminated the model you once made me wear. It's ugly, in every sense of the word." "Mia, did you do this to get back at me?" "No. I did it to end an era. One where I had to endure humiliation in the name of family love." She went silent. I hung up, not needing a response. Over the next 3 months, I received regular reports from the financial oversight firm managing the Hayes family. Logan lasted 2 weeks at his job before quitting, citing a toxic work environment. My father attempted to apply for an emergency loan from another bank but was denied because Whitmore Holdings had already flagged his credit as high risk. My mother unexpectedly became a gardener. For the first time in her life, she pulled weeds with her own hands instead of pressing a button to call the staff. I didn't intervene anymore. I had done my part. the rest was their choice. One Saturday afternoon, I returned to the bookstore. Not as the employee but as the actual owner. I placed the old photo frame of me and Grandma Margaret in the center of the table, behind it a white curtain gently swaying. I sat down, held a cup of tea and closed my eyes. No more anger. No more pain. Just a quiet sense of peace, slowly spreading in my chest. My grandmother once said, "True strength doesn't lie in revenge. It lies in knowing when to let go." Today, I fully understood that. 3 months after the trial, spring began to touch Boston. The first flowers bloomed along Commonwealth Avenue, but the real change, the slow and silent shift, was not in the parks or sidewalks, but deep inside a small house in the suburbs of Worcester. I sat in my high-rise office, 39th floor of the Whitmore Executive Tower, looking at a screen filled with data from the Financial Oversight Department. The March report on the Hayes family had arrived, and for the first time, I paused at every line. Financial status, stable. Weekly spending, under the regulated threshold. I attended all 12 financial counseling sessions at the Franklin Center. I didn't believe it right away. I had to call to confirm with the program manager. She gave a small smile. "Mrs. Hayes is the first to arrive every morning, always sits in the front row, takes detailed notes. And Mr. Hayes, he doesn't say much, but always brings a small ledger, records every single expense. They're genuinely serious." I sat still for a moment. And Logan? According to the HR report from Pet King Roxbury, he had worked for 7 consecutive weeks without missing a shift. For the first time in his life, he was living off his own wages. "Logan is very quiet now," the store manager wrote in an email. "He seems to still be adjusting, but he doesn't complain, he does his job, on time." Gone was the arrogant heir who once stepped out of a Porsche talking about AI and billion-dollar visions. Maybe, for the first time in his life, Logan was really living. That afternoon, I didn't attend the executive board meeting like usual. I stayed in my office and asked Sarah, my personal assistant, to bring in a wooden box. The box was small, old, with a bronze lock that had darkened over time. I opened it and took out a faded photo. Grandma Margaret and me, standing in front of the bookstore when I was 14. She was smiling, her hand on my shoulder, eyes saying, "You'll be stronger than I ever was." I had kept that photo for 11 years. Carried it through 3 apartments, 2 states, and dozens of moments when I wanted to throw it away. But I never dared to. Today, I didn't just look at the photo. I saw myself in it. I remembered the early days, when she taught me how to keep expense records with a fountain pen. I remembered how she patiently explained what stocks were using corn kernels and a tin can. I remembered the winter night she held me while my mother scolded me for learning useless things, and said something I would never forget. "Mia, don't be afraid when people look down on you. They only do that because they don't know how easily you could make the whole world bow someday." I placed the photo on the desk, next to my laptop and the folder. Gently, without tears, but with a storm of emotions inside. That weekend, I went to Worcester. I didn't announce it. I parked 5 houses away from my mother's, then walked. The small house, painted white, had the plum tree in the front yard just as I'd arranged. No big gate, no statues, stone fountains, or chandeliers. Just a home. A real home. I saw my father cleaning the windows. No longer a manager, no tie. Just an older man bending down to live a life without illusions. My mother was mowing the lawn, hair tied neatly, wearing rubber gloves. I didn't walk up, I just stood from afar for a few minutes. Long enough to see they were trying. That night, back in Boston, I wrote a line in my digital journal, a habit I'd kept since my grandmother passed. The greatest strength doesn't lie in wealth, but in how we choose the moment to reveal it. She was right. I didn't need to make them suffer. I just needed to let the truth do its job. I didn't retaliate, I offered an opportunity. Whether they chose to start over or keep falling was up to them. The next day I went to Maple Pages, the old bookstore I had kept untouched. I never renovated it too much, never hung a corporate-owned sign. It was where I grew up. A living memory. Sarah texted me, "Are you sure you want to keep this store? It doesn't make a profit." I replied, "I don't need it to be profitable. I need it to remind me where I started." In the afternoon, a young customer, around 15 years old, came in looking for books on investing. He asked, "Do you think an average person can become wealthy?" I smiled, bent down and handed him The Millionaire Next Door. Not only can they should. The boy smiled, paid with a few crumpled bills, then walked away, unaware he had just received advice from one of the wealthiest and most discreet female CEOs in the state of Massachusetts. I watched him leave, quietly thinking to myself, let them think you have nothing. When the time comes, show them you have everything. 5 years later, I stood in the grand hall of the Harvard Business School, where crystal lights from the ceiling reflected off polished wooden floors, creating an atmosphere both solemn and quiet. In my hand was a microphone, and in front of me were hundreds of students. Young faces full of hope, eager to hear the journey of the anonymous woman of Boston's financial world. I began with a line Grandma Margaret once whispered to me before I left Vermont at 18. "When you're underestimated, you don't need to argue, just prove it with results." The hall went silent. I talked about the days working at an old bookstore, about hiding a multi-million-dollar fortune, just to see who loved me for real, and who only loved the wallet I carried. I spoke of family, not with resentment, but with the calm of someone who had walked through pain and arrived at the chapter called growth. I shared how I took control of all their debts, but instead of crushing them, I gave them a second chance. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Forgiveness means choosing not to let that pain imprison your future. After the talk, a young female student approached me shyly. She said her mother once called her a failure for not studying law like she wanted. That she felt invisible in her own family. I looked at her, short hair, eyes still red with emotion, and I saw my younger self. I took her hand. "You're not invisible. You're just waiting for your moment to shine, and when it comes, don't apologize for shining too brightly." My parents' house in Worcester is different now. Not luxurious, not grand, but comfortable and warm. I still visit every few weeks. Not out of obligation, but because I choose to. My mother now volunteers at the local church, and my father, he unexpectedly found joy in growing organic vegetables, and always sends me bundles of lettuce with a scribbled note. Homegrown, truly organic. Logan works for a nonprofit organization that supports startup initiatives for underprivileged youth. He once said to me one evening in our mother's kitchen, "I used to think money was power, but it turns out it's just a tool. The one holding it is what matters." I just nodded, saying nothing. Because I knew he had finally understood something it took me nearly a lifetime to learn. Maple Pages remains open every day, now with a small cafe in the back left corner and a bookshelf labeled, "Free, if you need it more than I do." I no longer work there directly, but I still come in every week, sit in my old corner and read a random book. To remember the journey I'd taken. On the center wall, I've hung a photo of me and Grandma Margaret, next to a small plaque that reads, "True strength doesn't lie in wealth, but in how we choose to reveal our dignity." Now, I no longer live in two worlds. I don't have to hide and I don't need to flaunt. I am Mia Whitmore, the woman once deemed unremarkable, once overlooked by her own family, once drowned in the false glow of someone else's spotlight. And now, I am the keeper of my own light. Sometimes late at night, when the city is quiet and only a few skyscraper lights flicker in the dark, I sit on the balcony of my apartment, sip a cup of mint tea, and whisper a silent thank you to the past. Thank you for not believing in me. Thank you for underestimating me. Because of that, I learned to believe in myself. Without anyone's permission. And if you, the one reading this, have ever been told you're not enough, remember this. Your silence today may be the loudest echo of tomorrow. Be patient. Your moment will come. Mia's story is not just a journey to reclaim justice from an unfair family. It's a powerful testament that a person's value doesn't lie in recognition from others, but in how they choose to face pain and grow from it. In real life, many have been underestimated or dismissed just because they didn't fit expectations or didn't show off. But like Mia, when we stay true to ourselves, learn to wait, and live by our real worth, the moment to shine will come, and we won't need to ask for permission. What do you think of Mia's journey and her family's transformation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel to explore more heartfelt stories about life, family, and true human value. Have you ever achieved everything you once fought for, only to realize that it could all be taken away from you in an instant? Have you ever stood at the peak of glory, yet felt suffocatingly alone? I thought that when I saved the family business from bankruptcy, when I turned it into a premium food empire, I would finally be recognized, and the company would be mine. But it turned out, I was too naive. My family blindsided me with their decision. But they will regret it. Crystal glasses clinked, their delicate chime echoing through the VIP room of the Hawthorne, one of Boston's finest restaurants, a celebration of my success. After 8 years of relentless work, countless sleepless nights, and betting everything I had, I finally made it. Roswell Gourmet, the premium artisanal food company I resurrected from a failing mom-and-pop shop, had now become a national brand. I had just secured a $7,500,000 investment from Wellington Partners, one of the most prestigious venture capital firms, to expand production and distribution. Applause erupted as Edward Hastings, the firm's lead investor, raised his glass to Rose, the formidable woman who has proven that with relentless effort and determination, nothing is impossible. I smiled, raising my glass in return. I should feel completely happy, shouldn't I? But then, my mother leaned in, her voice just low enough for me to hear over the lively chatter in the room. Rose, you've done very well, but when Andrew returns next month, I think he would be the better choice for the CEO position. I froze. Andrew. My brother. The one who had been gone for an entire year, traveling across Europe after earning his MBA from Wharton, without contributing a single thing to the company. I blinked, struggling to keep the smile on my face. The shock was overwhelming. What are you saying, Mom? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She gave my hand a gentle squeeze as if consoling a child. You're capable, Rose. But Andrew is a man, and he has an MBA. He'll be stronger in business. His travels have given him a broader vision than you. I almost laughed. Broader vision? I was the one who had dedicated my entire life, my youth, to saving Roswell Gourmet. When my parents were at a loss, watching the company teeter on the brink of collapse, I was the one who walked away from a lucrative 9-figure financial career, leaving behind the stability of New York, to return to Boston. I mortgaged my own apartment, took out loans to keep the company afloat through its darkest days. And what had Andrew done? Hopped from one Michelin-starred restaurant to another, lounging on luxury beaches, posting Instagram photos with hashtags like business mindset, earning his MBA online. His experience amounted to nothing more than globetrotting and indulging in the finest luxuries the world had to offer. I tightened my grip around my wine glass, feeling the blood in my veins simmer with rage. But when Edward Hastings glanced at me curiously, I forced myself to swallow the fury rising in my throat. I couldn't expose this betrayal now. Is everything all right, Rose? Edward asked, his voice calm, but I was anything but. I took a deep breath, raising my glass higher. Perfectly fine. Keeping up the illusion. But in my mind, one thought echoed. My parents had disrespected me, dismissed my years of sacrifice and hard work. They expected me to hand everything over to Andrew. I wouldn't let my brother waltz in after doing nothing and take control of everything I built. They had decided to give my success to him. 8 years ago, when I stepped out of the gleaming glass tower of Baxter & Co., where I had worked as a financial analyst in New York, I knew I was making the biggest gamble of my life. I still remember the way my boss looked at me that day. "Rose, are you really giving up a promising career to sell jam?" So I didn't answer. Because at that moment, I didn't have a definite answer. I only knew one thing. If I didn't act, Roswell Gourmet would collapse. And to me, that was never an option. The first days at Roswell Gourmet were hell. I stepped into the flagship store in Cambridge right at noon. No customers. No online orders. Bills piled up on the desk. I looked at my parents. They looked exhausted, drained, but the worst part was the resignation in their eyes. They had accepted failure. I couldn't. I immediately took action. During the day, I stood behind the counter, personally serving every customer, trying to understand what they wanted, why they used to come here but had stopped. At night, I buried myself in balance sheets, searching for every expense that could be cut, every flaw in the system that could be fixed. In the first month, I shut down the second store. My father protested furiously. "You can't do this, Rose, we've invested too much in it." "That's exactly why we're in debt." I pushed the financial reports toward him. "We're losing $12,000 a month. If we don't shut it down now, in 6 months, not only will that store be gone, but the entire company will be too." My mother fell silent. She knew I was right. 3 weeks later, the second store officially closed. By the third month, I'd bet everything on e-commerce. I knew that relying solely on local customers would never allow Roswell Gourmet to grow. We needed a larger, more stable sales channel. I did what no one else dared to do. I used my own apartment as collateral to secure funding for the e-commerce system. I sold my old engagement ring, a Rolex I had bought with my first paycheck at Baxter & Co., and pooled every last bit of my savings. With that capital, I hired a team of developers, and over the next 6 months, RoswellGourmet.com officially launched. In the second year, the biggest turning point happened. One day, a famous food blogger unexpectedly wrote about us. I never thought a jar of jam could leave such a lasting impression on me, but Roswell Gourmet's product did just that. Her post spread like wildfire. Sales tripled within a month. I seized the opportunity to launch a monthly subscription service, and within 6 months, we had over 800 subscribers. Roswell Gourmet was no longer just a small shop, it had become a real brand. 4 years later, I had taken the company to an entirely new level. Revenue increased by 340%. Our products were now on the shelves of over 200 stores nationwide. We had over 200 loyal customers. I once thought this would be the moment my parents were proudest of me. But even after accomplishing all of this, in their eyes, I was still just holding the seat warm for Andrew. Back to the present. I sat in my office, looking out at the streets of Boston. The crisp October air made me more alert than ever. I had fought, sacrificed too much to get here. And yet, they thought I would give it all up so easily? I glanced down at my phone screen. A new message from my mother popped up. "I spoke with Andrew, he thinks it's time for a change too. You should reconsider the CEO position." I clenched my phone tightly. Did they really think I would let this happen? No. I built this company. I turned a small shop in Cambridge into a national brand, thanks to my connections from my previous job. Former partners had supported me tremendously. And yet, in my parents' eyes, I was still just keeping the seat warm for Andrew. My celebration had just turned into a declaration that I would be replaced in the very company I had pulled from the brink of failure. Sitting in the limo on my way home, I watched the city lights flickering outside the window. A plan began to take shape in my mind. I once believed that if I worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, my parents would finally see my true worth. But I was wrong. I knew that if they handed the company over to Andrew, everything I had fought for would be destroyed. I wouldn't let their reckless idea of putting my unqualified brother in charge become a reality. For the past 3 years I had learned everything, every aspect of the business, and now, I would use that knowledge to save this company once again. But more than that, I would save myself from the disaster my parents were trying to bring upon me. It would be catastrophic. As dinner neared its end, Edward Hastings, the lead partner at Wellington, raised his glass in a toast. Rose, you've transformed a small shop into a national brand. Without you, Roswell Gourmet wouldn't exist today. I look forward to a long and successful partnership between you and our firm. I smiled, about to respond, when my mother suddenly spoke up. Edward, my son Andrew will be taking over as CEO when he returns next month. This is the perfect time for a transition. For someone with a deeper management background to take the company even further. The room fell silent. It felt like the entire world had frozen. The words she had just said, had I misheard them? I snapped my head toward her, but she remained completely composed, as if what she had just announced was the most natural thing in the world. Excuse me, Mrs. Roswell. Edward spoke up, his voice lower, the excitement gone. What exactly do you mean? My mother smiled confidently. Rose has done a wonderful job, but Andrew has an MBA from Wharton and a strategic vision. She has laid a solid foundation, but to elevate the company to the next level, Andrew is the better fit. A foundation? I had spent 4 years building this company from the ground up. I had sacrificed my youth, my finances, my sleep, my entire personal life. And in my mother's eyes, I was just a stepping stone for Andrew? The investors' reaction. I glanced at Edward and his team. They were exchanging looks, clearly displeased by what they had just heard. Mrs. Roswell, Edward said, his tone serious. Our investment is not in the Roswell family. Our investment is in Rose. We trust in her vision, in the strategies she has successfully executed over the years. My mother seemed taken aback but quickly recovered. Of course, we will still have Rose managing things, as she has been, she said with a dismissive smile, but the company will grow even more with someone who has a broader vision. Andrew, taking over as CEO, is the right step for the company's future. I clenched my fists, feeling a cold rage spreading through me. They didn't see me as the one who had rebuilt this company. Edward looked directly at me. Rose, what are your thoughts on this? This was the most important moment of my life. I could explode right here and let chaos unfold. Or I could take control. I chose the second option. I set my wine glass down on the table and slowly lifted my head, locking eyes with my mother. It seems like this is a decision that I was not informed about, I said, my voice calm. Strange, considering I'm the one who has worked tirelessly to bring this company to where it is today. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I continued. I see, I nodded as if finally realizing something obvious. Everything I've done has been to pave the way for Andrew to sit in that seat. That's the truth. Isn't it, Mom? Her face hardened. Rose, don't say that. I only want what's best for the company. When a company grows, it needs even stronger leadership. I let out a short, bitter laugh. No. You want what's best for Andrew. You've never valued me. You've never believed that your daughter could be the one to lead this company. My counterattack began. I turned to Edward. I think we need a private meeting on Monday. He understood immediately, of course. I stood up. Thank you all for coming. I believe my dinner is over. I turned on my heel and left the room behind. My father called after me, but I didn't stop. I saw everything clearly now. They never intended for me to hold this company long term. But as experienced as they were, they had underestimated me. I wasn't someone who would easily let my hard work be handed over to someone else. As I stepped out of the restaurant, I pulled out my phone and dialed Daphne, the head of marketing. We need an emergency meeting, I said, my voice cold. What's going on? She asked, concerned. I took a deep breath. My family is trying to replace me, and I won't let that happen. I had never believed that success was something that could be stolen. If someone wanted to take what I built, they would have to fight for it, and I would make sure they lost. Sunday morning, 6 a.m. I was already at the office. Roswell Gourmet's headquarters was quieter than ever. No one else was here yet. Just me, the numbers, and a plan about to unfold. In front of me were two folders. The first, a plan to defend my position as CEO, proving that I was the only one truly capable of leading this company. The second, a backup plan. If they insisted on replacing me, I would leave and build a new brand, taking my loyal team, suppliers, and customers with me. I stared at the documents, feeling the cold air of the office wrap around me. No matter which path they chose, I would not lose. 9 a.m. The secret meeting with the investors. Edward Hastings and his team arrived on time. I didn't wait for them to settle in, I went straight to the point. I know exactly what my family is trying to do, I said firmly. They want to replace me with my brother Andrew. Diane Thomas, one of the key investors, adjusted her glasses, her expression serious. We noticed the tension at the dinner, she said. But the more important question is, which side benefits us the most? I scanned the room before placing a thick folder in front of them. Because I am the one who built this company, I said, my voice unwavering. I opened the folder, flipping through page after page of concrete proof. Financial growth. Since I took over, revenue had increased by 340%. Our products were now in over 200 stores nationwide. And we had 200 loyal customers. Strategic decisions. I was the one who shut down failing branches, launched the e-commerce system, and secured partnerships with major retail chains. As for Andrew, I slid a blank sheet of paper across the table toward them. This is a list of Andrew's contributions to the company in the past 8 years. Silence. Diane raised an eyebrow. A blank page? I gave a cold smile. Exactly. If you side with me, I will continue to drive growth. But if Andrew takes over, that will no longer be the case. I flipped to the next document. A customer survey report I had compiled over the past 2 years. I asked our customers a very simple question. I said, why do they choose Roswell Gourmet? Diane flipped through the pages, her eyes lighting up as she saw the results. 70% of customers said they were drawn to the brand story, a family business rebuilt by a young woman who dared to take risks. 25% said they trusted the product quality, something I had personally overseen and improved every single day. Only 5% of customers had even heard of the name Roswell before I turned it into a recognizable brand. I looked directly at Edward. No one cares about the name Roswell. They care about what I've built. And it's my name that brings value to this company. Edward sat silently for a few seconds before nodding. I see. I have a question for you, Rose. Edward said, his fingers interlocked. What if your family insists on putting your brother in charge? I slid the second folder across the table toward him. This is the plan for a new brand. Diane opened the file, her eyes widening as she took in the details. Distribution network. 80% of suppliers were willing to switch and work with me if I left. Key personnel. I had already spoken with the most critical employees in the company. They were ready to follow me. Marketing strategy. A complete brand repositioning plan with the message, the creator of Roswell Gourmet now brings you something even better. Edward stared at me, then smiled. You've been preparing for this for a long time, haven't you? I shrugged. I originally planned to use this for the family's next expansion project, but now, it's going to be my project. After an hour of discussions, Edward placed his hands on the table. We're with you, Rose. I kept my expression calm, but the anger inside me had finally cooled, replaced by absolute certainty. So what will you do if my family still tries to push me out? I asked. Edward tilted his head slightly, then gave a cold smile. If they don't keep you, then the entire investment goes with you. I took a deep breath. I had secured the biggest investor, now the rest of the shareholders would have to follow. Sunday night. I sat alone in my office. Outside, the city was completely dark. I held a glass of red wine, watching the city lights reflect off the glass window. If my parents made the wrong decision, they would regret it. I was ready for whatever came next. Monday, 8:30 a.m. I walked into Roswell Gourmet headquarters, as usual, but I wasn't. Daphne, Jason and Tamara, the three most important people on my management team, were already there. They didn't need a call. Didn't need a reminder. They knew what today meant. I looked at them, and for a brief moment, warmth flickered through me, in the middle of the storm ahead. They were here for me. Not for the name Roswell but for what I had built. Jason met my gaze, his expression firm. "Rose, are you ready?" I nodded. I was more ready than ever. 8:45 a.m. The glass office doors swung open and my parents walked in. My mother wore an elegant business dress, her makeup flawless, but it couldn't hide the tension in her eyes. My father looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept all night. And then, Andrew appeared. He wore a brand new suit, a smug half-smile on his face, as if everything had already been decided. I watched them but said nothing. Instead I walked to the conference table, opened my laptop, and turned on the projector. I wasn't here to beg. I was here to declare. 9:00 a.m., the meeting begins. When Edward Hastings and his team walked in, the atmosphere in the room shifted. My mother immediately stood up, putting on a polite smile. "Edward, thank you for coming. We have many plans to discuss. I think we should get straight to the point." Edward cut her off, his voice sharp. His gaze swept across the room, pausing on me before turning back to my mother. "We've all heard about your leadership transition plan." My mother's expression flickered for a split second. "I believe Andrew will bring a fresh direction to the company." Edward leaned back in his chair, fingers interlocked. "Perhaps you've forgotten the most important factor." He placed a folder on the table. "We invested in Rose, not the Roswell name." The room fell silent. Andrew's brow furrowed and for the first time, his smug confidence wavered. "I have an MBA from Wharton. I've worked with major corporations. I have." "What do you have?" I interrupted, my voice calm but ice cold. I clicked to the next slide on the screen. Total hours Andrew has spent working at this company over the past 8 years, 26. Number of strategic meetings Andrew has attended, 0. Number of deals Andrew has secured, 0. Actual work experience, none. Real-world corporate exposure, none. Time spent traveling instead of working, years. I locked eyes with him. "If you think an MBA and a few trips around Europe qualify you to be CEO, you're mistaken." My mother still refused to back down. "Rose, I'm not denying that you've done an excellent job, but with Andrew's experiences, he can take the company to the next level." "Based on what?" I narrowed my eyes. "Your favoritism?" My father sighed, running a hand over his face. He knew this was a mistake, but my mother wasn't ready to admit it. Edward leaned forward, his voice slow but carrying an undeniable weight. "We cannot invest in a company where the CEO is replaced by someone with no contributions. If Rose leaves, we leave." My mother was stunned. "You can't do that." Edward smirked. "No, I'm simply stating the facts." I looked at them and laid out 2 choices. Option 1. I remain CEO. I continue to lead this company as I have for the past 4 years. I turned to Andrew. "You can work under me as Vice President of Business Development, where you can actually learn how a company operates." Andrew clenched his fists but said nothing. I continued. Option 2, I walk away. I take my loyal team, my supplier network, and our customers with me. I looked at my mother. "And when that happens, this company will collapse." The truth finally broke through. My mother opened her mouth to argue, but she couldn't find a valid reason. My father looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "You're right." He picked up the pen and signed the agreement. My mother had no other choice. She gripped the pen tightly, but, in the end, signed as well. I kept my expression calm, but deep inside, I knew this was the moment I had truly secured everything that rightfully belonged to me. The meeting ended. Daphne was already waiting outside, her eyes shining. "Did we do it?" I looked at her and gave a small smile. "We won." Roswell Gourmet still existed. But From this day forward, it was mine. Not my family's. 6 months later, I once thought that winning that boardroom battle would make me feel triumphant. That when I signed the agreement confirming my position as CEO of Roswell Gourmet, I would feel relief. That I would finally experience the recognition I had craved for so many years. But reality was different. Victory didn't bring absolute satisfaction. It only confirmed what I had known all along. I never needed their validation. The company thrived. Under my leadership, Roswell Gourmet didn't just remain strong, it exceeded every expectation. Revenue grew by 50% in the past 6 months, far surpassing initial projections. Our subscription service had reached over 300,000 loyal customers. Our products were now available in more than 350 stores nationwide. And most importantly, I had proven that this company's success wasn't because of the Roswell name. It was because of what I and my team had built. Family dynamics changed. Things became strictly professional. I no longer attended family dinners. No more check-in calls from my mother, no more forced efforts to maintain the illusion of a harmonious family that I had once tried so hard to uphold. We only spoke when necessary, and only about business. My father had accepted reality. He no longer tried to convince me to share power with Andrew. When he saw me in meetings, he remained serious, but had stopped offering unsolicited advice, as if he still had authority over me. My mother, however, was different. She couldn't hide her disappointment every time she saw me leading the company. I saw it in her eyes. She still believed that Andrew deserved this more than I did, despite all the evidence proving otherwise. She was still waiting for the day I would make a mistake, for me to stumble so that Andrew could step in and take my place. But that day would never come. And Andrew? He still hated me. He didn't bother to hide it. After being forced into the role of Vice President of Business Development, he tried to prove his worth. But he couldn't keep up with the company's pace. He never would. For the past 6 months he had pitched countless groundbreaking ideas, yet none were practical enough to implement. Every time he presented a half-baked plan in a meeting, I only needed to ask one simple question to leave him flustered. Andrew, do you have any data to prove this will work? His response was always silence, or meaningless numbers. And little by little, he was pushed to the sidelines. He hated me for that. But he hated me even more because he knew I was right, and that I was better than him. One late evening, I stood by the glass wall of my office, looking down at the dazzling lights of Boston. Daphne walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She sat across from me, observing me for a moment before speaking. Are you satisfied? I let out a small laugh. With what? She shrugged. With everything that happened? With proving that you're the only one who truly deserves to run this company. I gazed out the window, thinking for a moment. I don't need to prove that anymore, I said, my voice soft but resolute. For so long I had sought validation from my parents, from the very people who should have believed in me from the start. But now, I understood. I didn't need their approval. My worth wasn't defined by a CEO title or my family's acceptance. My worth was in what I built, and in the people who believed in me from the beginning. Daphne nodded, a knowing smile on her face. Then here's to your victory. She raised her coffee cup. I clinked mine against hers, but I didn't call this a victory. This was freedom. I hadn't just reclaimed my company, I had reclaimed my life. The story of Rose. Rose's journey wasn't just a corporate power struggle, it was a fight to reclaim her self-worth. Her story reflects a harsh reality in many families: favoritism, traditional expectations, and the dismissal of efforts from those who aren't seen as the default heir. But Rose proved that true value doesn't come from status or external validation, it comes from what we build with our own abilities. Success isn't handed to you, you have to fight for it. And sometimes, the greatest freedom comes when you stop seeking approval from those who never believed in you. What does Rose's story make you think about? Have you ever been in a situation where your efforts were overlooked? Share your thoughts in the comments below, And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about family, success, and self-worth.